look, the war on drugs, if you know, 50th anniversary, yay. If it started in the in the 70s and you call it a war, we don't actually treat it like a war when it comes to how we then treat victims of that war, right? So we haven't, it seems like a one-way war, but we don't, from the United States perspective, it's like, well, as long as we can pump a bunch of weaponry and strong talk into it, that's fine. But in terms of like, the Afghanistan war, obviously, which we did, or victims of the drug war that we have created ourselves, we are much less sympathetic to victims fleeing those so-called wars. Do you feel like that's maybe a tactic to not declare it a full-blown war? I mean, I'm not saying we should declare it a full-blown war, because then what are we going to do? Are we droning people? Are we sending more militia? I mean, the way America does it. But it is interesting how we then treat sort of the actual body count as, like you're saying, it rivals that of the Middle East, but we don't see it as that.
Yeah. I mean, great points. So, like, you start off with this war on drugs, which is a bit of a metaphor in some ways when it begins. We'd have a war on drugs, we go hard on drugs,
right?
And then it becomes actually militarized, and you see that, in Florida, and you see kind of Navy boats and stopping the cocaine flying to Miami, flying to Florida. So when they cut off the cocaine there, it bounces to Mexico, and then you see them like paying the Mexican military, the Colombian military, to be burning crops and stuff. And then it takes on this real force of its own in Latin America, and it's weird. It starts becoming the war on drugs and becomes the drug war, like a war over drugs, a war financed by drugs. And I remember, first, running up. I worked for the Houston Chronicle, when I was young and dumb, and they were like saying, cover the drug war in Tamaulipas. It was just beginning to rise up, and it was like the drug war. And you start to see it really becomes a war, becomes an armed conflict. So, I believe it is an armed conflict. I mean, whatever, and you get into a big, fight about it for a bunch of reasons. But yeah, you're right. The governments don't want to call it an armed conflict for various reasons. In the United States, if they suddenly say, what is an armed conflict happening in Mexico and Central America, then all the refugees fleeing it have their cases really reinforced. So right now you have the judges, they don't want to give asylum to people fleeing drug cartels in Mexico, even drug cartels working with dodgy police or corrupt police in Mexico. They don't want to give them asylum. But then suddenly if you start saying, well, there's a real war down there, or we're going to name these groups terrorists, well, you're fleeing a terrorist organization that we recognize as a terrorist organization. That changes things. Another thing, we can get into this later, when America's providing all the guns to these people. So you suddenly say, well, these people who are selling guns are like selling guns to terrorist organizations. So there's kind of a weird thing there of how to define this. I believe it's a hybrid armed conflict. I believe we need to find a new vocabulary for it and figure out a policy to deal with this stuff. It's sad. I mean, I spent 20 years just running around here, and you see that nothing seems to work, or very little seems to work. And right now we've got kind of some of these more like strong men rising up. Bolsonaro in Brazil, Bukele in El Salvador right now coming up saying, with these more authoritarian policies in response to a lot of this violence.
What's going on, Frantifa? If you haven't already, subscribe to this channel right now. Hit that button. And also, you can become a patron and support the show every single week. Get access to bonus episodes and exclusive merchandise. Patreon.com/Bitchuation Room. Do it.